Good evening. I'll call this meeting of the Housing Authority for the City of Salem for Monday, October 10th, 2022 to order. If the recorder will please call the roll.
Vice Chair Stapleton.
I'm here.
Commissioner Nishioka. Commissioner Nishioka.
I'm here, thank you.
Commissioner Phillips.
Here.
Commissioner Leung. Commissioner Leung, absent. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner Nordyke.
Here.
Commissioner Varney.
Here.
Chair Hoy.
Here. Thank you. If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Vice Chair Stapleton, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
We do not.
Thank you. We have nobody signed up for public comment. Vice Chair Stapleton, the consent calendar.
Yes, I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. The consent calendar consists of two items tonight. Item 3.1A, which is the September 26, 2022 draft Salem Housing Authority minutes, and item 3.3A, the Sequoia Crossing Housing Project. And that concludes the consent calendar.
Is there any discussion? If the recorder will please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Leung, absent. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Nordyke.
Aye.
Commissioner Varney.
Aye.
Vice Chair Stapleton.
Aye.
Commissioner Nishioka.
Aye.
Chair Hoy.
Aye, motion passes, and my dog agrees as well. So we have no public hearings and no special orders of business and no information reports, but I did want to give Ms. Utes a chance to comment on anything she might have for the Housing Authority Board. I know she doesn't get a chance too often, so I wanted to give her that opportunity if she wanted to just maybe highlight 3.3A or anything else she wanted to chat about.
Good evening. I'm Nicole Utes, the Housing Administrator for Salem Housing Authority. And we wanted to thank everybody for approving tonight for Sequoia Crossings. This has been a challenging time to get projects completed and done with market capacity, inflation, and cost, but we are going to see this one through. We are looking forward to this will be our 11th project since 2014, when we first started out preserving and renovating and adding to the stock for the Salem Housing Authority. So it's a big milestone that we're now hitting our 11th project, and they're scattered all throughout the city of Salem. And we're proud to see this permanent supportive housing actually come to life in a very challenging environment to make happen.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. Thank you for your great work and for all the staff over at Salem Housing Authority. We really appreciate it. It's because of you that these good things are happening. So thank you. And we have no other business before us. So with that, the Housing Authority is adjourned.
Very good. I'm going to call the Urban Renewal Agency meeting for Monday, October 10th to order. If the recorder please call a roll.
Board Member Stapleton.
I'm here.
Board Member Nishioka.
I'm here as well.
Board Member Phillips.
Here.
Board Member Leung. Absent. Board Member Gonzalez.
Here.
Board Member Hoy.
Here.
Board Member Nordyke.
Here.
Board Member Varney.
Here.
Chair Bennett.
Here. Councilor Hoy, any additions or deletions?
No.
Okay, I have no public comment. So I'll do the consent calendar. Councilor?
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Second by Stapleton.
So we have item 3.1A, the September 12th, 2022 draft Urban Renewal Agency minutes. Item 3.3A, appointment to the West Salem Redevelopment Advisory Board. Item 3.3B, amend the fiscal year Riverfront, I'm sorry, let me start over on this one. Amend the fiscal year 2023 Riverfront and Fairview Urban Renewal Area project budget allocations. Item 3.3C, start the process to change the Fairview Urban Renewal Area plan and boundary. And that concludes the consent calendar.
Okay. Any discussion? If the recorder, please call a roll.
Board Member Phillips,
Aye.
Board Member Leung, absent. Board Member Gonzalez.
Aye.
Board Member Hoy,
Aye.
Board Member Nordike.
Aye.
Board Member Varney,
Aye.
Board Member Stapleton,
Aye.
Board Member Nishioka,
Aye.
Chair Bennett.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes. We have no public hearings. We have no special orders of business or information reports. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency. And call to order the City Council meeting for Monday, October 10th. If the recorder, please call a roll.
Counselor Stapleton,
Here.
Counselor Nishioka,
Here.
Counselor Phillips,
Here.
Counselor Leung, absent. Counselor Gonzalez.
Here.
Counselor Hoy,
Here.
Counselor Nordike,
Here.
Counselor Varney,
Here.
Mayor Bennett.
Here. Okay. Any additions or deletions?
No.
Okay. Time for members of the council and the city manager to comment. Councilor Nordike.
Thank you. Good evening. First of all, I received a text message from a constituent stating there's no sound on CCTV, so I will trust that our staff will get that fixed. And I know that there is an ongoing transcription of our conversation, so I will proceed and assume that that is dealt with. A few quick remarks. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I look forward to hearing the proclamation later this evening. I am also excited to report that the Withnell Family YMCA now has an official opening date of October 20th. We are accepting new membership, and I'm super excited for all of you to see the new facility. And I want to thank Council President Hoy and Mayor Bennett for your kind words at our ribbon cutting ceremony a few weeks ago. So thank you very much for that. That's going to be a huge improvement in our downtown core. Next, this Saturday is the Community Action Agency first ever annual gala. I'm super excited for Community Action Agency. For those who don't know, community action is essential to alleviating poverty in our community. There are so many people that they help on the margins, and I can only imagine how many people would be homeless but for their hard work. They have a huge mission, and for folks who will be joining me at the gala, you'll be hearing all about that firsthand from the in-house experts. But just to name a few of the things that they do, they operate a day center for adult homeless individuals. They operate a day center for youth homeless individuals, as well as an overnight shelter. And they recently received grant funding to open a youth shelter in Polk County so that Polk County homeless youth do not have to come to Salem to have somewhere safe to go where they can do their homework, apply for summer jobs, and interact with positive role models. They also do things like Head Start and weather efficiency weatherization for low-income residents so that their utility bills don't cost as much. All of these things add up to making a huge impact in our community. I have been serving on their board, and I've been attending many of their meetings for the last year, and they are in terrific financial shape. And overall, I'm just really excited for their ability to build programs and expand their reach. So very excited about that. And I hope you can join me at the gala. If not, I know they're running a silent auction. Next, I've been working with the American Association of University Women. They have a Salem, Oregon branch, and we are currently working on a tree planting project at Stevens Yoshikai School Park. Please join us for a kickoff at November 3rd at 5 p.m. at the Salem Public Library, Anderson Room, which is on the bottom floor. This is our kickoff event where we are going to be inviting the Parks and Rec urban planner, Milan Davis, and our natural resources planner, Jennifer Mungalo, to talk about our plans to put in more trees at this park. And I should point out that this park, which is located in Councillor Gonzalez's ward, desperately needs more tree canopy. My ward has some of the best tree canopy in the city, but I would love to see us grow our tree canopy in underserved parts of our community. So I'm really excited that this particular location, out of plenty of potential options in the city of Salem, was selected. So come one, come all, if you are interested in being a part of that and making a tax-deductible contribution. Last but not least, I would encourage folks to read carefully through all the comments that were provided tonight, particularly from Linnell Wilcox. Ms. Wilcox has worked in a number of shelters involving persons experiencing homelessness over the years. And she provides some really compelling testimony that should be a great education for folks who don't know much about homelessness in our city and what it's like to experience homelessness here. Among many of the examples that Ms. Wilcox cites, she talks about the fact that we have people in our shelters right now who are trying to make ends meet, who are working but do not have a permanent place to stay. And I point that out because one of the frequent myths we hear about people experiencing homelessness is that they choose not to work, that they won't work, that they refuse to work. But we know from plenty of examples at our shelters around the city that that's simply not the case. And we also know that one of the shelters that the city most recently approved, the one that Church of the Park is running at Center Street, will focus on workforce development to help get folks back on their feet for those who have the physical capabilities to do so. The reality is that many homeless individuals suffer from severe disabilities, intellectual, physical, and developmental. So employment is not going to be an option for every single person who we are serving. But I do want to remind folks that we are working hard to help place people and to help them accomplish goals that are within reach. So thank you, and I look forward to our meeting tonight. It's great to see you, colleagues, once again.
Thank you. I got a call from Mrs. Bennett. The sound's still out apparently, so just share that with you as you think about what you're going to have to say. Councillor Phillips. Your sound is, there we go.
There we go. Sorry. Thank you, Mayor Bennett and my colleagues. Even though the sound's out, I just want to share a little bit. I just want to express to the community, I appreciate your patience. I had to miss the last meeting where you guys came together. I was able to watch that meeting on YouTube. Personally, last month, my father-in-law, my in-laws live about a block from us, and they're very close to our family and our kids. My father-in-law experienced a series of strokes last month and was hospitalized twice. On the day of our last meeting, he was recovering from open heart surgery to successfully correct the issue that was causing his strokes. So I just wanted to share my appreciation for the patience of my constituents and people who've reached out to me in the last several weeks. I appreciate your understanding. It's going to take a little time for me to kind of dig out from those emails, but he's recovering well. I also want to personally thank, Salem Fire for responding so quickly the second time, and for local Falk and EMS for, getting him transported to the hospital quickly. I want to thank, my colleagues in the emergency room. Fortunately, I wasn't working those days, but they did a great job, as did the staff on the 7th floor of Building A and the 5th floor of Building 5. It's a great institution when you need it. I always tell people, I hope I never see you in the emergency room, but if I do, we'll take good care of you. I just wanted to express that gratitude to those important, frontline workers. Beyond that, Friday morning, I was awoken a bit early, as maybe some of you were as well, by I would guess, what is characterized as a minor tremor here in the Willamette Valley. At 5:52, I think near Sweet Home or Lacombe, there was a 4.4 tremor that has nothing to do with the Cascadia subduction zone. It's just, we are on the Cascade Mountain Range. So these things happen. but it seemed to last a few seconds longer than the last 2 or 3 I recall in the 14 or 15 years that I've lived here. And it kind of served as a wake up to me that we could be a little more prepared. So as a city councilor, I will be asking staff what I can do and what we as a community can do to be as prepared as possible. And I do appreciate that city staff shared on their Facebook page, City of Salem Facebook page, the upcoming event, the world's largest earthquake drill, which is referred to as Shakeout. So that's happening on October 20th of this year. So not this week, but next week on Thursday. There'll be an event where we drill together and try to learn like what to do in the heat of the moment and what we can all do, taking small steps and big steps to be as prepared as possible. So where you can go more, it's just an online link. It's www.shakeout.org. So it's the words shake and out all together, followed by .org. And I certainly have been perusing that the last couple of days and found it very informative.
Thank you, Counselor. Best wishes to your father-in-law for a speedy recovery. That's glad things are going well.
Thank you.
You bet. Yes, Counselor Hoy.
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if we might take just a brief break while I think technicians are working on the sound issue before we get into the meat of it, just to give folks the opportunity to hear
the rest of the meeting. Yeah, thank you, Counselor. We'll adjourn it. Well, we'll stand in recess until we have ourselves on TV with sound. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Manager, did you have anything?
Just to finish my comments in regards to potentially coming back in person, and Dan certainly can weigh in here as well, but we are moving in the direction of coming back in person in January. Again, we'll present some options to you for how to do that. I certainly hope that we are back in person together. We have been talking about the potential for a retreat. I think it's very important that if we have a retreat, that retreat is in person 100%, and not a hybrid function. So more to come on that.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to proclamations then. We'll begin with proclamation recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day. Whereas from time immemorial, Oregon lands have been home to many Indigenous peoples, including members of the Sandiam Kalapuya, whose ancestral homelands include the area known as Salem Kaiser today, and throughout the surrounding Willamette Valley area, including what is now the city of Salem. They've lived and prospered by maintaining strong cultural ties to the land and through wise management of resources. And whereas in 2020, the city of Salem signed an agreement with the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon. And in 2021, the city signed an agreement with the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians in order to strengthen the relationship between the city and the tribes. And whereas we affirm our commitment to fostering a deeper understanding and appreciation for the diversity of cultures and celebrating all that Indigenous people do to cultivate a community that honors and respects the diverse history of Salem. Whereas on May 18th, 2021, the Oregon Legislative Assembly approved House Bill 2526, approving the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Day. Now, therefore, I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim October 10th, 2022 as Indigenous Peoples Day and encourage residents to join in learning about and honoring the culture and recognize the contribution of Indigenous people have made to our country, our state, and our community dated this 10th day of October, 2022. And I believe Dolores Pigsley's here to receive the proclamation. We can see if Dolores had anything she'd like to say. There she is.
I would just like to say thank you. I very much appreciate the fact that the city recognizes this particular day. In the past, it's been Columbus Day, and our tribe's never taken the day as a holiday, but when it became Indigenous Peoples Day, we took it as a holiday.
Great.
And we don't have anything in particular that we're doing today other than we're able to take a day off and rest and try to recuperate from all the things that have been happening. So we appreciate the city of Salem, and we thank you very much for the recognition.
Great. Thank you very much, Dolores. Okay. I'm going to move on then to National Planning Month. Whereas community planning manages change in cities, towns, and rural areas and suburbs and provides opportunities for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. And whereas realizing the benefits of planning requires public officials and residents who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the American Planning Association endorses National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight how planning is essential. And whereas planners work to improve the well-being of people living in our communities, taking a comprehensive perspective, which leads to safer, more resilient, equitable, and prosperous communities. And whereas City of Salem planners help ensure the changes to the built environment align with the community's vision of future growth and development. Now, therefore, I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim October 2022 as National Community Planning Month and recognize the valuable contributions made by both the City of Salem's professional planners and our volunteers who serve on the Salem Planning Commission, dated this 10th day of October 2022. And here to receive the proclamation, speak to it, is Lisa Heller, a City of Salem Planning Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've been working on the adoption of the middle housing rules, and we've worked on the new tree ordinance. We'll continue to work on the middle housing rules, and next year we plan to tackle the new sign code. I just want to give a shout out to the planning staff because they are fabulous. And to make a plug for them, since it's National Planning Month, they're having an event at the, okay, now this is going to take me a minute because there are too many F's. Work 40 Food Hall downtown. They're having a public event from 4 to 6 p.m. And you can meet and talk with the planners, and there are games and prizes. So please let everybody know that you know so they can attend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. What's the date of that again?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 4:40 from 4 to 6?
Yes.
Okay, great. 440 on State Street, right?
Yes, that's right.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you. And thank you for your service on the Planning Commission. It's really, this kind of work cannot be done without the kind of citizen involvement that you all on the Planning Commission bring to the table. So thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you, sir.
Okay. And finally, this is White Cane Safety Day. Whereas the City of Salem recognizes that everyone has the right to equality, opportunity, independence, and freedom, and whereas we also recognize that those in our community who are blind or otherwise disabled have the same rights as they pursue employment and full participation in the economic and social life of the community, and whereas we understand that the white cane is not only a tool used by those who are blind to travel independently and safely, but is also a symbol of their rights as they pursue their goals. And whereas we recognize that these rights are protected through laws at the state, local, and federal levels through legislation known as the White Cane Law, in an effort to prevent accidents, and whereas we urge motorists to act courteously and to take proper precautions when encountering blind pedestrians on our streets and sidewalks. Now, therefore, I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim October 15th, not today, October 15th, as White Cane Safety Day, and invite the community to use this occasion to reflect upon the significance of the white cane and to support employment and full integration of blind individuals in our city, dated this 10th day of October. And present, and I'll read the list, and I'm not sure who all's speaking: John Hamill, Blind Skills Board member, former Salem Kaiser Transit Board member, Nick Young, Be Bold Street Ministries, and Marja Byers, sight loss instructor at the Hall Foundation and Learning Center. So who's up?
This is Marge Byers. I'll
Marge,
go
hi.
ahead and get us started. Thank you so much, Mayor Bennett. I very much appreciate the city recognizing White Cane Safety Day. It's actually now known as International White Cane Safety Day. It was actually started in 1964 by the U.S. Congress after a joint adoption of the resolution. And as I said, it's now recognized internationally to bring awareness of those of us who use white canes as well as our guide dogs. They are basically both extensions of our bodies that do two slightly different tasks. Part of the Oregon White Cane Safety Law that a lot of people don't realize is that if someone using a white cane or a guide dog is in a crosswalk, it is illegal to cross in a motor vehicle that intersection as long as any part of their body, their dog, or their cane are in the sidewalk. We've had a lot of close calls. I appreciate the fact that there are people in this town, motorists, who are working to be more aware. And quite honestly, Salem has such a huge increasing population of people that are losing sight, starting to use white canes. And I would like John to speak as well. One of the things that we also know is populations will go where they feel comfortable. And as our community grows, we are growing more of a blind community within Salem. And it's something that I absolutely love. John, would you like to say a couple of words?
Sure. Let me
Push your button.
John, you muted yourself. Okay, is there anyone else, Marge? And we can wait, and John may get himself back.
Well, unfortunately, Nick
there he is.
There we go.
So
Yeah.
Nick is not able to be here. So John, go ahead.
You betcha. As the president of the local chapter of the American Council of the Blind, I want to thank the city of Salem and you, Mayor Bennett, for this proclamation. As Marja has pointed out, traffic safety is a considerable issue for us people with low vision. And also, as she mentioned, the Salem area is getting a disproportionate share of new people with vision loss. Not just because Salem has a fairly old population and vision loss is associated with aging, but also the Western Oregon State University has programs for blind people looking for jobs and blind people looking to improve their methods of communication. So we are having people moving into the Marion Polk area from all across the Northwest. So we are particularly appreciative of the importance of recognizing white canes and guide dogs for safe use of our streets and sidewalks.
Great, thank you, John. I know, I think awareness over time has changed substantially with the loss of the blind school. And for so many years, we had folks out working and practicing and learning, and not having them now, we don't get as used to the white cane and guide dog interaction with traffic as we used to. Okay. So, be aware. Okay, I'm going to move then to public comment on issues on the agenda that are not public hearings. Phil Carver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, staff, and councilors. I'm here. My residence is at 1007 Newport Drive, Southeast, and I'm representing 350 Salem, Oregon. And thank you for the opportunity to comment. The issue I'm talking about is the airport, commercial service at the airport, and the report that you'll have is information 5A. And as a retired professional economist, I can say that this is the scenario you're given in the report is a very optimistic scenario, and is different from what's happened historically, where the airlines have come in and then decided the service is not functional. And what we ask is that you have a formal motion of how you're going to finance the airport commercial service. The report talks about different kind of taxes and a bond, and we think that those are all quite irresponsible. It's not a good use of fiscal resources to subsidize the airport, and it's my understanding, I could be wrong, but I thought the city had a policy to not subsidize airport operations. So I think it's time to really make a decision. And I think that the reasonable decision, given the very negative report that you're going to receive at item 5A, is to terminate all use of the grant that you received and return the money, the federal money and the private money, to the federal government and private individuals, because this project is financially infeasible without huge subsidies. And this is not the kind of thing we can afford in a budget constrained environment as we see it for the next few years. I just don't see how why this is continuing on after this point. You really have to, this is really a decision point. And what we ask is that at the next council meeting, there be a decision on either how it's going to be financed or to terminate the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Any questions for Phil? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on then to David Withnell. David?
Excuse me, Mayor Bennett. We've actually skipped Kathy from Ward 4 on accident. She's listed first as a speaker for this evening.
Oh my gosh, she sure did. I'm sorry. We'll do her right now then. Kathy?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Bennett. All right. Good evening, Mayor Bennett and Salem City Councilors. My name is Kathy Ostrand-Conchen. I live in South Salem. I'm here tonight to speak to agenda item 7.1a, the first reading of amendments to Salem Revised Code, Chapter 97, adding housing status as a protected class and other updates. I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission and am chair of the Awareness Campaign Task Force. I also participated in the work group that developed the recommendations that are before you tonight. I wanted to provide a bit of background. In December 2021, the Human Rights Commission recommended to Council revisions to the Salem Revised Code. First, that housing status be added as a protected class. Public comments received by the Commission, as well as responses to the 2021 discrimination survey, describe cruel treatment that houseless individuals living in Salem have had to endure. Ordinance Bill number 2122 states the city's policy to eliminate discrimination based on several factors and adds housing status as one of those factors. It makes it unlawful to discriminate against an individual on the basis of housing status, and it makes it unlawful to commit a number of acts against an individual or the individual's property based on perceived housing status. These changes are very meaningful, not only in providing individuals who have been harmed with some recourse, but also in making a statement to the community at large that our unhoused neighbors have value and deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. The Commission's second recommendation was to review Salem Revised Code 97.085, which describes a number of exceptions when discrimination is allowed. We were particularly concerned about the exception that allows discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity in certain leasing or renting situations. As a result of the city attorney's review, this entire section is proposed to be removed. The Commission also recommended that gender language be removed from the code, and it's my understanding that those changes have already been made. Finally, we recommended that the definition of sexual orientation in the code be revised. The recommendation is not reflected in the ordinance bill. The definition of gender identity is proposed to be updated, but not the definition of sexual orientation. The current definition of sexual orientation is very limited. It defines it as actual or perceived heterosexuality, homosexuality, or bisexuality. But sexual orientation is not an either or, it's a broad spectrum. The current definition, however, is consistent with state law, and we were advised that it could not be changed at this time. We may want to consider a future recommendation that the definition in state law be revised. I want to thank the City Attorney's Office for working with the Commission to draft language consistent with our recommendations. The changes will promote diversity, inclusion, and safety within our community, and I ask that it please advance to a second reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank Kathy for coming and testifying today, and the entire Human Rights Commission, and for all your great advice on this and helping us get to a good place with this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Hoy.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much. Now David with Nell.
Okay, there you are. Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Good evening. My name is David Withnell, and I'm here to ask your support of agenda item 3.3A. My wife Laura and I, we represent DEW Investments LLC, own the property and businesses that surround Cross Street. We are wanting to vacate the right of way and bring this 137 feet street under our ownership and maintenance, and we want to make it part of our Hyundai dealership. It's on the back side. So I'm just requesting the council move to approve the staff recommendation and see what they've said, and then also I just want to thank you for your time and for your consideration and all the things you guys do on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any questions for Mr. Withnell? Okay, great. Thank you very much. And Linnell Wilcox.
Oops. Sorry. Hi, Mayor Bennett and City Councilors. I'm here to request you to advance Ordinance Bill 2122 to a second reading for enactment. That bill is the one that adds housing as a protected class under SRC Chapter 97. I'm so grateful to the City of Salem having a discrimination survey and to the Human Rights Commission for doing all their work to coordinate those questions, and Western Oregon University students and teacher Marianne to be able to create this tool and to do the follow-up to try to create more equity, fairness, and inclusion and safety in our city. In my work, I've had the honor of hearing some people's stories, and some of them break my heart, some of them burst my heart, but so often people are experiencing, who are experiencing homelessness are treated as if they're vermin or invisible. They're fellow human beings with no home, living on the streets in cars or tents. Some of them are washing up in bathrooms, leaving early for a job. Others are not able to work. Every one of them is struggling daily with basic survival, and insults and attacks add trauma on top of trauma. I don't know if I could get up each day against all odds amid the daily insults and occasional attacks and try to move forward again each day. I feel like they're warriors. Marianne and some of her students from Western Oregon University join me one day a year surveying the people on the streets, meeting people where they're at. Together, we heard the extreme noise of people revving their engines, screeching their tires, yelling insults as they drive by. We also were told that some people throw firecrackers, some people shoot a gun into the air. Some people shared they're often ignored as if they're invisible, even when they're just trying to be a paying customer in a store. People shared about attacks, rapes, sex trafficking, harassment, robberies, having tents slashed, which is their own protection from the elements. One woman was sprayed with acid, which blinded her almost completely. Some people have followed them with megaphones as they narrate campers' activities and harass them. Some men have broken into tears as they shared about being peed on as they slept on a sidewalk. To me, these actions are true examples of hate. People rarely report these incidents because they're often not believed, because there's rarely anything that can be done once the offenders have fled the scene, and because individuals fear retaliation that might be worse than what's already happening to them. The HRC's recommendations on this topic reflect diligence and closer alignment with Salem's diversity, equity, and inclusion goals, and it reflects humanity towards fellow human beings. Adding housing as a protected class makes a statement that these targeted cruelties are absolutely unacceptable and that we will not tolerate those actions. Please vote to
Thank you,
advance
Linnell.
ordinance.
I'm sorry, time's up. I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions for Linnell? All right. That's everyone signed up. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. Councillor Hoy.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second it. Nishioka?
Second by Nishioka.
All right, we have item 3.1A, the September 26, 2022 draft city council minutes. Item 3.2A, the transfer of fiscal year 2023 appropriations for the Navigation Center renovation project. Item 3.3A, petition initiated vacation of Cross Street Southeast west of 20th Street Southeast. And that concludes the consent calendar.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, if the recorder please call a roll.
Counselor Nordike?
Aye.
Counselor Varney?
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton?
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka?
Aye.
Counselor Phillips?
Aye.
Counselor Leung?
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez?
Aye.
Counselor Hoy?
Aye.
Mayor Bennett?
Aye. Okay, motion passes. We'll move to public hearings then. 22-456. The city recorder can take us into this one.
The City Council will conduct a public hearing concerning a legislative zone change on Commercial Street Southeast. The criteria applicable to the proposed amendment are SRC 265.010D. Testimony must be directed toward the identified criteria or other criteria the person believes to apply to the decision. The hearing will be conducted with a staff presentation first, followed by other interested persons. Neighborhood associations are limited to 5 minutes per association for testimony. Individuals testifying are limited to 3 minutes.
Very good, thank you. Okay, who's going to be the staff presenter? Austin, are you the?
That's me.
You're on.
All right, thank you. Just sharing my screen here. My name is Austin Ross, Planner 1, and I am presenting the staff report for case CA 2202. I'd like to enter the staff report and this presentation into the record. This is regarding the proposed legislative zone change on Commercial Street Southeast. So the location of the proposed zone change is just south of the Liberty Commercial Split. It's on properties adjacent to Commercial Street and between roughly Superior Street Southeast and McGilchrist Street Southeast. And the subject properties on this map are outlined in bold. The properties are proposed to change to mixed use 2 zoning. Currently, they're a mix of commercial office zoning, which is shown in pink on this map, and retail commercial zoning, which is shown in red. This is a follow-up on the Our Salem project, which was the recent effort to update Salem's comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan map, the zoning map, and the zoning code. It was approved and became effective in late August. And during the Our Salem project, the community expressed a desire to see mixed use zoning along Salem's major corridors to help promote walkability and livability. And in this area in particular, it's close to downtown. It's located along a frequent transit line, and having a mix of uses will help reduce the need to drive and make this a more complete neighborhood. So during Our Salem project, staff had proposed mixed use 3 zoning on these properties. But during the adoption process, the SCAN neighborhood provided testimony that they would prefer mixed use 2 zoning in order to limit auto-oriented uses and to ensure that development was compatible with surrounding residential uses. In order to make that change to mixed use 2 zoning, it requires public notice to property owners. So rather than delaying the Our Salem project to do that notice, council directed staff to remove these properties from the proposed zone changes in Our Salem and bring back a new ordinance to rezone them to mixed use 2. And so that's why we're here this evening. This proposal would affect 35 properties. And it's important to note that they are already designated mixed use on the Salem Comprehensive Plan map. So changing the zoning to a mixed use zone is important to make sure that the zoning aligns with the comp plan designation. Otherwise, there could really be some issues down the road in terms of development. It's also important to note that there are 4 overlay zones in this area. They affect all but one of the subject properties, and there are no proposed changes to those overlay zones. The purpose of the overlays is to minimize the impacts of non-residential uses on those existing next door residential uses. So they do things like add additional development standards, landscaping requirements, and they prohibit drive-throughs. The implications of the mixed use 2 zoning would really be to help guide this corridor towards pedestrian-oriented development. That's through pedestrian-oriented design standards. It would also limit certain uses, for example, new auto sales and services uses, including gas stations. There are businesses within the project area that currently have auto sales and services uses, and they would become continued uses. So they would be able to continue operating as they are today. In terms of the pedestrian-oriented design that the mixed-use 2 zone requires, it includes things like ground floor windows and awnings, facade articulation, which are things like molding between floors or elements of visual interest, as well as requiring parking to be either in the rear or on the side of buildings, and requiring that there's an entrance facing the street, not just the parking lot. Circling back to those overlay zones, there's one really important element of those zones, which is the maximum height. So the standards in the overlay zones take precedence over the base zoning, which means that even though the mixed use 2 zone allows up to 55 feet, these overlays limit it to 35 feet, which is the same maximum height as the single family residential zone. So it would they really keep development in scale with the surrounding neighborhood. Prior to this evening, staff received 1 written comment from the Scan neighborhood in support of the proposed change, though I saw that another comment was received today. And staff's recommendation is to advance this bill, or this ordinance, bill number 1822, to second reading. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Very good. We'll go to public comment and then be back, I'm sure, Austin, to ask you questions. Mark Shipman.
Good evening, Mayor Bennett and members of the City Council. For the record, Mark Shipman, Land Use Attorney with Sawfield Griggs, 250 Church Street, Southeast, Suite 200, Salem, Oregon, 97301. Here this evening on behalf of the property owners of 2390 Commercial Street, Southeast, which is owned by Do Investments, and 2410 Commercial Street Southeast, which is owned by the Donofrio family and Donofrio LLC. I'm here with David Withnell and with BJ Donofrio to speak in opposition to the staff recommendation. We believe that changing all of the properties identified in the map as Exhibit A is a mistake, and that a more surgical approach needs to be used here in this case. Specifically, we want to see those properties south of Hoyt Street to be zoned as MU3 rather than MU2. And our reason is this: we believe that staff got it right the first time with our Salem, especially as it relates to those properties south of Hoyt Street. We believe that MU3 is the right direction. The Scan's desires for more pedestrian-friendly development along those portions of South Commercial Corridor is laudable. However, the conundrum that we have is the character of this segment of street frontage on South Commercial Street is predominantly oriented towards motor vehicle uses and has been for more than 30 years. With this section of South Commercial, I feel like we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. MU2 doesn't work for this section, MU3 does. Austin also had an interesting notation with respect to the overlay zones. If you noted on his presentation, it's actually not on the map in the staff report in your packet, but in his presentation, he identified the Hoyt-McGilchrist overlay zone in this specific area that I'm talking about that has height limitations already of 35 feet. So that already goes towards the protection for those neighbors further to the east of where these properties are located. So if we're looking at pedestrian friendly and we're looking for protection of those neighbors, those are already in the code in the overlay zone. And as Austin noted, that doesn't change. But what does change is that, and it's important to this distinction is really important. Austin kind of glossed over the notion of current uses, and he's correct. Under the proposed MU2 zone, current uses of these properties will remain. But what's really important here under the current use definition in the MU2 is it doesn't allow for new buildings. And that's fatal for the Donofrio property. And the reason I say it's fatal for the Donofrio property is because if Ford Motor Company comes to Skyline Ford and tells them as a part of their new electric vehicle program, they need them to put in some sort of kiosk, some sort of showroom, some sort of building on their property with EV charging stations on it, that's not permitted. No new building is permitted whatsoever. And that's fatal, okay? That's missed in the report to you, and that's just not acceptable. So these property owners need more flexibility. You're going to hear that from both David. You're going to hear that also from BJ. They've had the commercial retail zoning. They know the comp plan has changed. We're not objecting to comp plan change. That's water under the bridge. We are trying to be more surgical and more specific with this zoning. So I respectfully request that you continue this hearing to a date certain, and that you direct staff to come back to you with a revised ordinance that bifurcates the MU2 and the MU3 zoning based on our testimony. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mr. Shipman? Okay, David Withnell. Chris, I'm going to have you take this for a minute. David will be first, and then if I'm not back, BJ Donofrio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Withnell, go ahead.
Sorry, just trying to get the video back on. Thank you. Gosh, I've never been involved with a city council meeting, and I get to talk twice today, so I feel quite privileged. You know, Mark really hit the nail on the head, pretty much covered the basis of what the problem is. The MU2 is so restrictive for us to make any type of changes that are going to probably happen within the next few years to our lots, and so there's this uncertainty of what do we do. You know, the lot has been set up for me specifically for rental and a car wash, and you know, and then of course that, you know, any type of restriction unknown in the future really puts just puts us in a bad light, and so more than anything, if we go to the MU3, at least we have some flexibility. I understand the process of what they're trying to accomplish, but Mark uses the right word. It just needs to be surgical. If you look at if you drive down that street from Hoyt going south, there's a total different feel of the businesses versus it north of there, and so you have there's a definite with the Jiffy Lube, and then us, and then with Donofrio's lot, it's not the same kind of neighborhood atmosphere that I think that is what they're trying to ascertain here with the zoning change. And so, you know, I just think we need to really look at this thing again, and make it so that it's just not quite so specifically restrictive, and especially for us that have, you know, we've had these properties for 30 years, and they've been, you know, that used to be the car row, and we're not going anywhere. So I just would appreciate you guys really taking another look at this.
Thank you, Mr. Withnell. I have a question for you. In plain terms, what's your concern that you might not be allowed to do in the future if we were to adopt this?
Well, a couple things. You know, one is that, you know, if I wanted to, you know, and I've thought about this, is put a different car wash in, you know, and make it a little bit more, I mean, it's busy all the time, and, you know, and it's a pretty small lot, but then, So I don't know what that would be. Also too, looking down the future, if someone wants to go into this property and wants to do something different, then they would have that restriction. And so everything that we've done and established for this location isn't going to be easily changed for a mixed use type, boutique type storefront with, apartments up above. It just doesn't fit the nature of that particular location.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Withnell? Yeah, Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bennett. And thank you, David, for being here tonight. Do you know if mixed use 3 at the surgical location that you're advocating on part of would be sufficient for what you're looking for in terms of flexibility and future development at the properties you're talking about tonight?
I believe so, yes. It would give us that flexibility.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll go then to BJ Donofrio.
All right, thank you, Council. My name's BJ Donofrio, and I'm here tonight in opposition of the rezoning for Commercial Street for the MU2 to MU3. We've owned the property, or we own the block at 2460. We've been buying pieces of it over the last, I think, 30 or 40 years, or my family has at least. And we just so to rezone to MU2, let's see. Hold on. Yeah, so we have no plans of changing anything on there, but the issue is if we want to do, we have to do an EV deal on there, and we have some chargers on there as it is. And my understanding is we wouldn't be able to add to that if we needed to. And so that would be a big issue for us. I mean, if we can't add anything to that lot, then we'd have a big issue there. And I mean, I understand that the it's already been changed in the comprehensive plan to mixed use, but it'd be, if we're here to see if we can get a change from, MU2 to MU3 if it does end up going through, or at least move it down to Hoyt Street, because our property is the last one south that it affects. So and we'd be, we're not planning on changing anything. I mean, it's going to be as a continued use is the plan with it. But, just in the future, if we're not able to do anything, extra with it, like Mark was saying, if we need to add, like a kiosk or anything, and we're not able to, then we have nowhere to go is the issue. We're landlocked on commercial. So for us, at least, I mean, we just don't have any more property up there. So we're asking for your consideration to maybe, think about changing it from MU2 to MU3 if it does, go through. So that's what we're asking.
Great. Thank you. Any question? Yes. Councillor Nishioka.
Thank you, Mayor Bennett. And BJ, if you'd stay on for a moment. So I just want to make sure that the others understand that you're simply asking, as Mark Shipman referred to, is a surgical dissection, and it's just the 2 blocks from Hoyt Street to McGillcrest, 2 blocks, all the rest MU2, and you're just asking for those 2 blocks as MU3. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any further questions? Thank you, BJ. Austin, do you want to come back and let us see if there's any questions for you? One thing you could do, I think that would be helpful, is to bring up your map and let us just one more time see where these properties are we're talking about.
Sure. So I have a map here that's showing just the properties with auto sales and services uses. So those are the ones outlined in blue. So you've got the dealership in the lower blue box, and then the car wash just north of Judson. And then just north of that is I think a Jiffy Lube.
So this is the Withnell's property, is that correct? That you're-
The Withnells is the one, I believe, just north of Judson.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Councilor Nishioka.
So yes, as I understand it, the one that's north, which is at the top, is with Nell, and then the one south is Donofrio.
So these are the two that would go to MU3 under Mr. Shipman's proposal, is that correct?
That's correct. And then everything north of that would remain MU2. So they're not asking the whole area, simply those two properties that they have.
Okay.
And it was also explained to me, and if Austin, you want to clarify, is that if something were to happen to their property, such as a fire, again, fire was referenced to me, that if they needed to rebuild, they would not really have the opportunity to even rebuild to their current state, even though they can remain doing business, but if something were to happen. Now, I may have that wrong, so I'd like some clarity on that.
Yeah, I can provide some clarity. So in the mixed use 2 zone, if a building is destroyed and it needs to be rebuilt, it needs to be built to the standards of the mixed use 2 zone. So those development standards. The use can remain, but it may not be able to be rebuilt as is. So for example, if a building wasn't close to the sidewalk right now, it would need to meet that 0 to 10 foot setback that's in the mixed use 2 zone today. So you may not be able to locate it in the exact same spot, but you would be able to rebuild.
So
Councilor Hoy. Oops, I'm sorry. Linda, go ahead. I apologize.
So again, I think it's just the uncertainty of the what ifs for these businesses. And I think that's the reason for asking if these two areas could be in MU3. So that's, thank you, Austin. That's what I needed to hear.
Thank you. Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Austin, thank you for the clarification. But to go one step further with that, so let's say that we go to mixed use three for these two properties, and you know, given the unfortunate circumstance that you described, let's say that there was a fire that destroyed one of the buildings. Could they then rebuild it exactly as it is today in a mixed use 3, or would there be other restrictions as well there?
So these uses would not be continued uses in the mixed use 3 zone. They're allowed as conditional uses, which is the same as the CR zoning, which exists today. So their status as a continued use versus a conditional use wouldn't change under mixed use 3 zoning. So they wouldn't have that issue.
Okay, so just to clarify, under mixed use 2, there is no path to rebuild. Under mixed use 3, there is a path to rebuild.
Under mixed use 2, they would have to rebuild, but the development standards would be different. Under mixed use 3, they could rebuild as is.
Thank you.
Would that require any legislative action by the council, any kind of land use action rather by the council to allow them to proceed in MU3?
It might require site plan review, but that wouldn't normally come to city council.
Okay. Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Austin, could you tell me what the zoning is around these two properties? So I'm, you know, the stuff that's to, I guess, the left of us on that screen. Would this be, are those also MU3?
So across commercial from these properties, the properties in question are the two southernmost blocks on this map that are in red. The properties across Commercial Street are zoned mixed use 3. That was done through our Salem.
Okay. And then I have one more question, if it's all right.
Sure.
So my understanding of the our Salem was really kind of to help get rid of some of the overlays. And I didn't realize that there were overlays over here. Could you help me understand this? How's that for a broad enough question?
So these overlays have been in place for a long time. There were some that staff felt during our Salem were no longer necessary, and council agreed. In this specific location, because there are single family residential uses in some cases on the same block, it seems like it's maybe more important, and especially the neighborhood associations let us know that they wanted to see those overlays remain. So those overlay zones, here I have a slide about them. So they limit that maximum height. They also provide an additional setback adjacent to the residential zoning. So if your property backs up against, for example, somebody else's backyard, you need a little bit larger setback there. Businesses need to be oriented towards Commercial Street rather than West Nob Hill. And it includes some landscaping to provide a buffer. So those are the types of things that it applies.
Can I have a follow-up, Mr.
You bet.
So are there other areas in the city that would, you know, residents maybe would look at this and say, why don't I have that in my area of town? Or maybe they would discover that they actually did have that kind of extra protection. I'm going to use the word protection loosely here, but they had that extra protection. And then in our Salem plan, we removed those to try and help with this needed extra development in these areas. And does that kind of put staff or the city in kind of a catch-22 with other areas of town that maybe would or have had overlays but no longer do?
I think the only situation in which that might be the case would be something like the South Commercial Street area, way down south. There was an overlay there that was removed, but the primary thing it prevented was like outdoor storage. I think there are people south of this that might feel the same way, but we don't have existing overlays that would have offered them the same types of
Just
buffers.
to follow up on the councilor's question, I'm not sure I understood it. If we went with MU3 as is being recommended by Mr. Shipman, would we be eliminating that overlay zone, or would we go back to what you did initially in our Salem? Is that what's happening here?
It would be what we had proposed in our Salem on these blocks. The overlays would remain.
Would remain?
Yes. We didn't propose to remove them through our Salem, and we're not proposing to remove them.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Councilor Phillips?
Yeah, I think that was my question. It was what is it look like when it's done if we proceed with these 2 blocks, or mostly 2 blocks with MU3? Is it the height is capped at 35 feet is what I'm hearing. So thank you, Mayor. That was my question. My follow-up question was, I believe SCAN was very concerned about, the height of 70 feet. Even though built into MU3 is setbacks, and there are requirements that should make it more approachable, but I hear their concerns. I also believe that they were concerned about, the use of drive-throughs and other things in the part of where they're at. This is complicated. There's probably no way that they could have already dealt with that specifically with these 2 properties because they're already allowed under current use. Do we have a sense that given the height limit is there and that these are already used as drive-throughs or for selling automobiles, does SCAN feel strongly on this, or was their biggest concern just the height?
I guess I can't speak for SCAN in this instance. What was expressed to staff through their comments was that they felt that automobile-oriented uses were not appropriate in this corridor.
But these would have, and thank you for restating that, but these were allowed and would have gone through under continued use.
Yeah.
Yes, they would become continued uses.
Okay, fair. And so I guess my next question is the recommendation from some of the testimony we got was to continue the public hearing and to come back with a proposal that's more surgical, having these 2, blocks as MU3. Is that actually necessary, or could we make a motion tonight without taking the time to have staff come back to us? How complicated is something like that from a staff perspective? Like, is there a chance if I were to do it, we could mess it up? Not that I'm saying I'm going to do it, but I'll just pretend hypothetically, if I was going to do it, could I screw it up, or is it not that complicated?
Maybe our attorney here can.
There he is. He'll tell you.
Hi, Dan Atkins, City Attorney. Councilor Phillips, I'm sure you could screw it up, but I'm sure you wouldn't. So yes, you could make that motion tonight, and we could come back at second reading with an engrossed ordinance.
And you could advise Councilor Phillips if he hypothetically wanted to make that motion.
Yes.
And for the sake of argument, it really was hypothetical. I look forward to the other questions my colleagues have.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Nordijk?
Thank you. And for the record, I have full confidence in Councilor Phillips' ability to make motions on this floor. But that aside, I'm intrigued at the notion of having a surgical solution. Councilor Phillips asked a question about SCAN's position on this issue. And Councilor, I just forwarded the email that has SCAN's testimony. They do prefer a move to zone on Commercial Street from Superior to Vista Avenue, according to testimony that they submitted back in March of this year. And they gave a lot of reasons for that, but I think that having these two buildings exempted, to me, feels like it threads the needle while still, for the most part, addressing the concerns that SCAN has raised. I do actually have some questions for Austin. Austin, I had a resident contact me with a couple questions about this, so I will share those with you. Given the pedestrian transit friendly goal of the staff proposal, how will the city make pedestrian infrastructure improvements to go along with this?
It's a good question. So I believe Public Works will be embarking on our update to the transportation systems plan in the next year, and that is the venue for setting our transportation policy, and it can include things like prioritizing pedestrian amenities. Additionally, when development takes place, the developer is responsible for providing infrastructure on the adjacent right-of-ways. So if a property were to redevelop, it would come with, for example, new sidewalks and landscaping.
Great. And I mention that specifically because as I share this ward with Councilor Nishioka, and as I'm sure she's aware, I have a lot of residents who really love to walk as much as possible. They like to walk to French Press, they walk to Life Source, they walk through the cemetery. So having pedestrian accessibility and biking accessibility, I can tell you, is very important to the residents there. My second and final question for you, Austin, is under the housing density rules under this proposal, what would the city do to protect the neighborhoods from spillover parking from any large new housing developments that might emerge from the rezoning?
So these properties are within a quarter mile of the core transit network. So parking wouldn't be required in new multifamily development. That's not to say a developer couldn't provide that parking, but they would be able to do so based on what they thought the market required of them. So although there could be some parking on adjacent streets, that's something that, yeah, that could happen.
Thank you. I appreciate your honesty.
That's what our right-of-ways are allowed for. And I see Lisa turned her camera on. Do you have anything to add?
I do. Hi, Lisa Anderson, your planning administrator. Some of these neighborhoods around here, I was just looking on the map, do have the residential parking permits. So they've opted into that program. Not every residential neighborhood around here, but that is an option, and it's something the neighbors can come together and request. So that is one way to kind of limit that overflow parking on residential streets.
So Mr. Mayor, if I may, that question. Thank you so much. So Lisa, can you help unpack the residential permitting process? What does that mean? And how couldn't, if you live in a new house, if there's a new apartment complex being built nearby, are you unable to qualify for this residential permitting process?
I think you have to live on the actual street. So it's a block by block kind of permit. And then if you live on that street, you're eligible to get a permit, and it's a pretty low fee. And then you can also get some visitor permits. I know that from my experience growing up in the Grant neighborhood and living in a district, but planning doesn't administer it. So if maybe Public Works would be better to give any more details on that. But generally, I know it's an opt-in program for each block as they, if they find that they're having that problem. And I think generally then the streets are 3 hours. So somebody could park there for 3 hours without a permit, but outside of that, you would need a permit to, that you live there, or you would need a visitor's pass from somebody that lives there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Councilor Nishioka.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Bennett. So I do want to let the other councilors know that I reached out to the land chair at SCAN and did let her know that this conversation would be coming up. And we reviewed the map and discussed it. Of course, a bit disappointed because, it would be reducing some of it. But I would say that I was not met with sincere opposition. So what I would like to do is I would like to move that we continue public hearing to the next council meeting, so that others that might want to contribute to public hearing and statements, and we can have Austin and Eunice and Lisa continue to answer their questions and make sure that everyone understands what changes this might mean for the businesses that are there and for the hopes that SCAN had made with this recommendation.
Did you want, Councilor, did you want to make a motion to just continue, or did you want to continue with some sort of defined objective, which is the ME3 or?
Yeah, I certainly can. I can do that with a defined objectives that
Let people bounce off that. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I move staff recommendation to advance ordinance 1822 to a second reading with the following amendment. Properties between Hoyt Street Southeast and McGillcrest Street Southeast be rezoned to MU3. That would be the opportunity to move that forward. Would that be the?
Yeah, that's a good motion. Anyone want to second it?
I'll second it.
Philip seconds. Does everyone understand where this, it just sets up the another meeting on this issue with a defined objective of the MU3 is all that's happening in that motion. You'll take it up again. You get to do this again. Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I understood the motion a little differently. I actually understood it as advancing it to second reading. And so I heard Councilor Nishioka say one thing, but I think I heard the motion say something a little different. So I definitely need clarification.
So help me out.
You meant a continuation, didn't you, Councilor?
So I can move it to a continuation of looking at Hoyt Street Southeast to McGillcrest Southeast to be rezoned as a continuation to rezone to MU3. I believe that's the way I should say it. If not, someone help me out. See,
you think,
I messed it up.
You're doing just fine, Councilor Nishioka. Don't you worry about it.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I would suggest that you make a motion to continue the public hearing and ask staff to come back at that time with some proposed language that with some precision or surgical strike of MU3 in those two properties as discussed. I would, something like that.
I so move.
Okay.
Second.
I will second that.
Who seconded then? Philip, you're still second? Okay. Is there any discussion of the motion? Any more? Okay. The clerk could please, or the counselor, or the recorder, please call a roll.
Councilor Barney?
Whoever you're.
Aye.
Councilor Stapleton?
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka,
Aye.
Counselor Phillips,
Aye.
Counselor Leung,
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez,
Aye.
Counselor Hoy,
Aye.
Counselor Nordike,
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, something to look forward to. Where are we next? Just a sec here. Okay, special orders of business. Airport. I'm gonna turn this over to Kristen Rutherford and let her kind of weave us through this one.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I'm Urban Development Director, Kristen Rutherford, and I'm here this evening with an information report in response to council direction given at their July work session on commercial air service at Salem Municipal Airport, which I will also be referring to as SLE. The initial meet and hunt analysis that we shared with council in July has been revised to reflect the minimum amount of investments needed to start up commercial air service. SLE hasn't had commercial air service since 2008. The holding room at the terminal was expanded in 2007 to accommodate Delta's 50 passenger regional jets. An express jet, which operated as AHA Airlines, submitted a letter to the Transportation Security Administration conveying their interest in starting commercial air service to Reno with a 50-seat aircraft, which led to a TSA site visit last April and the initial meet and hunt analysis. AHA has since declared bankruptcy, but we have two other airlines that are currently interested in providing service out of SLE, but they operate larger than 50-seat aircraft. The terminal building capacity is designed for 50 passengers, not these larger planes. And TSA space requirements and building occupancy requirements mean that a renovation and expansion of the existing terminal will be necessary even in a minimal improvement scenario. Meet and Hunt, our consultants, has deep expertise in aviation and has been developing passenger terminals across the United States since the 1940s. Most recently, they've led the planning, design, and construction administration of new and expanded terminals in Santa Rosa, Pasco, Kalispell, and Reno. They work regularly with the TSA, the Federal Aviation Administration, state aviation departments, environmental agencies, residents and employees of surrounding cities and counties, and airport sponsors. Mitch Hooper, who is Meet and Hunt's Aviation Department Manager, is with us tonight to answer any questions relating to their updated analysis. The updated analysis included with the staff report reflects a rapidly accelerated project scoping effort that occurred in consultation with Meet and Hunt's architects, engineers, and terminal planners, our own city engineering staff in public works who have led our police, library, and public works shops projects, Salem Housing Authority staff who've led recent building construction projects, city finance staff, and Business Oregon staff relating to funding opportunities, as well as the air service development team, their consultants. Project timelines have been condensed as much as possible, but could be longer given the current construction climate and supply chain delays. Information that we received after the staff report was submitted for inclusion on the agenda. This is the result of meetings that we've had in the last 2 weeks with the Air Services team and Modern Building Systems. Indicate that the time and cost may be reduced by using modular buildings. City and Meet and Hunt staff explored this further last week, and it appears that by using a modular unit, the project timeline could be reduced from what was in your staff report, which could change the anticipated project completion time from what's in your staff report as spring of 2024 to the fall of 2023. Cost savings are also anticipated, but a significant cost would still be incurred. Without having any design specifications or having designed the connection to the existing building, which we anticipate will involve some siding and roof repairs due to deferred maintenance, we believe that the modular unit may be lower total project costs by 25 to 30%, down to roughly $4.5 to $4.7 million. This lower cost would decrease our debt service sum and our operational costs a little bit, but not significantly enough to eliminate the need for an ongoing subsidy from other funds like the TOP fund or general fund to sustain the operations. We have staff available this evening to answer questions relating to the staff report. And in addition to Mitch Hooper with Mead and Hunt, this evening we have Jack Penning from Bolair, who is the airline consultant working with the Air Service Development Team. He's on the line to answer questions, as is Alan Rasmussen from Modern Building Systems. So we'll open it up to council questions regarding the staff report or of the consultant teams that we have available tonight.
Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was hoping that we could hear from Mr. Penning maybe before I'm prepared to ask questions, if we could hear from him on his thoughts on current state and how to get to commercial air service. One of the things that I have been frustrated with over the course of all these conversations, and I've been in many of them, is that we haven't quite attained a shared reality in terms of where staff thinks we are, where consultants think we are, and where various players think we are. And I want to get as close to that as possible, because as council, we really need to have a solid footing before we make any sort of decision. And so I think as much information that we can get from all the experts and from the staff and everyone, the better. And so I would love to hear from Mr. Penning if that's possible.
Mr. Penning, and then would we also hear from Mr. Hooper?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think to kind of, if you want to hear from consultants, I think when you have two consultants that seem to be in divergent opinion, or maybe they're thinking the same now, might clarify it. Mr. Penning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and councilors, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Of course, I am the consultant for the Fly Salem Committee and the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce, working to recruit air service to Salem on behalf of your business community that desperately wants the service. I am also your consultant. I am the go-between between the Department of Transportation and the City of Salem, an advisor to help you handle the Air Service Development Grant that I wrote for your community and that we won. So to give you background, my firm, Volair Aviation, I'm here in Portland, Oregon based. We work for about 80 markets around the country. And I just want to say, of those 80 markets, we have 2 that actually have an air service, an option for new air service right now. There's a massive pilot shortage going on. Oregon has lost 22% of its seats. Portland has lost 28% of its seats. Communities do not have an option for air service right now. And so what you have is very unique. And I want you to understand that as we go into this. I would say I'm not probably going to make things any simpler for you. What I am here to represent is the view of the airline that wants to begin service. The airline that wants to begin service, which I'm not going to say their name for business reasons. I don't think it's fair. We have more than one. It's not fair to single out an airline and divulge their strategic business planning in a public meeting. But the airline that wants to begin service as soon as possible, frankly, as soon as March, that airline came to Salem, toured the facility, looked through it, compared it to other facilities that it currently operates to around the country, and said, frankly, in no uncertain terms, they are ready to serve the airport without any change to the terminal, without any change, without any investment. They are ready to serve with just the TSA being put in place, the TSA taking extra space in the hold room and understanding that there may not be room for all the passengers in the hold room at one time. In other airports, what they do is that they move people through security as they're boarding the plane. And that would be the idea if the hold room can't handle 140 people at one time, that they would simply screen people through as they're boarding so as not to go over the amount of space that's allowed by fire code. Same idea for ticketing and baggage claim. Is the terminal ideal? I think we can all agree with the Mead and Hunt report, with staff report. Terminal is not ideal for the commercial service. What the airline has told me, has told our committee in no uncertain terms, is it's more important to get up and going at this opportunity moment in time, the time at which Portland capacity is down, the time at which there's a chance to change passenger behavior and keep people who are traveling to and from Salem using their local airport instead of driving to Portland. When Portland gets all of its capacity back over the next 2 years, our opportunity window may have closed to change habits. They've also said they do not support, this is the airline speaking, that the city spending many millions on a terminal because it will increase their cost of operation, which will make tickets more expensive. They would like to phase a development over time using modulars initially so that we have proof of concept and we know just how many routes may work. This carrier is prepared to begin service really with May being the very last moment that they would want to begin to 2 cities, Las Vegas and an airport in the Los Angeles basin, with 2 more cities to follow after that, the San Francisco Bay Area and Phoenix. So 4 cities. We looked at our, I think it's important to think about this from an economic development perspective. We looked through many of our economic impact studies that study the impact of new service once it arrived at an airport. For the service that we're talking about, the minimum economic impact to the city would be around $1.5 million a year per route. So for 2 routes, $3 million in impact just in the first year. So I think there is a large impact for the city that any investment will be paid back in terms of the impact to the city. Now, talking about timeline is much more critical to the carrier than is what the facility looks like. And the thought being that over the long term, there will be time to fix the things that we don't like about the terminal and the way it is designed. But over the short term, the airline is evaluating 3 cities for service right now. And if we say that we're not prepared to host them by May, they will simply transition to another city and the aircraft and pilot time will go to that city. Essentially, we will no longer be in the running for service with that airline. And we can tell them that we won't be ready, and they will take the airplane and go to their second plan. It doesn't mean there won't be other airlines. There may be. But I can tell you, I've been working on this with the Fly Salem Committee for 4 years, and this is the first time we have an airline that is truly committed to serving. This airline also, I want to mention, has said that over the long term, they envision Salem as an aircraft and crew base over the next 2 to 3 years after beginning service. That would mean based aircraft, based pilots, based flight attendants, and based maintenance all in Salem, each aircraft bringing between 60 and 100 jobs, high-paying jobs to the community. So short-term investment could yield many long-term jobs, assuming the service is successful. This service is set at a time with a carrier with low fares to our top destinations with large aircraft on days people want to fly. This has much more chance of succeeding than any connecting service that has high fares and can't compete with what's available at Portland. So from my view as an analyst who's been doing this for 22 years and been working in Oregon for all of those years, this fit is perfect for Salem. I would encourage a very cautious approach to airport terminal changes and a very expeditious approach in terms of the thinking about how to get it done. And so with that, I will obviously be happy to take questions.
Mr. Penning, is there a period of time that, listening to this, there is a lot of sort of conceptual thinking going on too in the midst of this? How long will it take this service to really have some sort of proof of concept that, I mean, this really is working for this airline and they will continue adding flights? I mean, how does that play out? What's the timeline for the airline to make that kind of long-term commitment to us?
Well, I think the airline will be making a long-term commitment. In conversations that I've had with them, talking about lease agreements. Well, first talking about the agreement with our grant, that's a 2-year commitment.
Okay.
So 2 years. But in terms of lease agreements and conceptual concepts that I've been having the conversations about, they're talking about potentially a 10-year lease to begin. to use the terminal for 10 years. So an initial 10-year commitment to be in Salem. So this is much different than what we've had in the past.
Yeah, it is. It's quite a bit different than we've had in the past. That's really true. Thank you. Vanessa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Penning, for all you've done to support the city in this effort. I assume you've read the staff's report for this evening?
I have.
Do you agree with the staff's analysis that the cost for the minimal and mandatory improvements is $6.15 million?
I can imagine. You know what I would answer. I will preface. I'm not an engineer, and Mead and Hunt does a great job with engineering. So, Mitch, it's nothing against you. I represent. Well, I'm bringing to you the conversations that we've had with the tenant that wants to use the facility. The tenant wants minimal infrastructure improvements. And by minimal, I mean not millions, maybe not even hundreds of thousands. So judging by other projects that I've worked on for the last 20 years around the country, I think the terminal can be serviceable with much less of an investment than $6 million.
Can you at least explain how it is that you see that it could be done for hundreds of thousands versus over 6 million? Where's this disconnect here? What's the biggest difference in reaching that different number?
Well, the airline doesn't want to add any terminal space. That's the biggest difference.
Okay, but I know we have to meet TSA requirements, right? If we don't get TSA's approval, nobody's flying, correct?
Yes.
And so what I want to try and understand is what is the minimum, what do we have to do to get TSA to approve this? Is that $6.15 million or is it something less?
That question, I haven't asked TSA that question, so I can't answer. What the airline would, what their security division would like to see is the TSA utilize extra space within the boarding area. Instead of adding space. And if there's not enough room to accommodate everyone who's getting on the plane in the remaining space in the boarding area, they will simply stage the screening throughout the boarding process. That is their preference.
Okay, and so when we look at the staff report, it doesn't give me a whole lot of detail here. It just says that the terminal capacity study says it's going to add up to 6.15. And I looked through the staff report itself, but what I'm having a hard time understanding is what's the bare minimum and what are the bells and whistles that we can add over time as we show that the airport is making money. And that's a question I think I'll have both you and Mr. Hooper answer to the best of your ability, because that's the bottom line here. What can we do to make this work? So I'll give you another chance to ask that. And then I have one more question for you.
Well, I would just say, I think it's important that the tenant be involved in this discussion, your potential tenant, and that potential tenant says the bare minimum based on its experience working with the TSA and its other stations is to use current space for TSA and TSA equipment and not to add space.
Okay. The other question I had is I've heard that the FAA has entitlement funds, which are eligible once you start commercial service. Would SLE be eligible for entitlement funds? And if so, what's the anticipated range of entitlement funds for FAA that we could use to help make the improvements necessary?
Right, those entitlement funds, John Pascal will hit me in the face if I don't make it clear that those entitlement funds must be used for capital improvements to the field. But when we hit 10,000 passengers, which with this service we will easily do in our first year, we get an extra $850,000 a year in FAA entitlement automatically. So we go from $150,000 a year to $1 million a year in FAA funds to the airport. Now, that money must be used on capital improvements. It can't be used to pay for staff or to buy property or anything like that. But it is still a significant amount of money.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stapleton.
Give other folks a chance to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stapleton.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Penning. I just have a simple question. Earlier in the conversation, you had said an annual 1.5 million per route of economic growth is what you're projecting. And then in 2 to 3 years time, you mentioned that 60 to 100 jobs. Was that per route that you were saying, or was that a total of 60 to 100 jobs?
So the 60 to 100 jobs would be based on the number of aircraft that would be based at Salem. So in other examples, this carrier has gone into an airport very similar to Salem, added 1 aircraft. That aircraft has done well, added a second, added a third, and then a fourth. If we were up to 4 aircraft, we'd probably have near 400 employees in Salem. We would also have probably, if we were at 4 aircraft, around 16 nonstop destinations.
Okay, thank you. And I'm guessing that these are fairly well-paid positions.
The pilots, yeah, we're talking hundreds of thousands, over 100,000 a year for most of these positions, for 2/3 of them.
Great, thank you so much.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Penning, well, thank you for your time. I always like when a consultant comes in and says, let's find a way to spend less money. So I do appreciate that. But with regards to funding, and from your experience, especially knowing Oregon, any airports that you know of that are losing money?
Certainly, there are airports that are subsidized. In Oregon, we have some fairly healthy airports, but even the Port of Portland does have a property tax. And so the counties here in the Portland metro area, I have a property tax on my bill every year for the Port of Portland. It is not uncommon for airports to require continuing subsidy. For example, I'll give you a Champaign, Illinois. It's a similar community in terms of population to Salem, and it's owned by the University of Illinois. The airport there, the University of Illinois has to spend about $700,000 a year on operations to keep that airport going. For the University of Illinois, it's a good investment because it keeps air service going, and they need that to grow. So it's very, very common for airport ownership to provide an ongoing subsidy for operations to an airport. It's also very common for an airport to have its own property tax, but we don't see that commonly in Oregon.
Okay. When you mentioned the tenant and TSA, who has the controlling call on that? Does the TSA consult with the tenant as to how much they'll take in terms of limited space or whatever, or is TSA the arbiter of that?
Yeah, TSA is going to say we need X number of square feet.
Okay. So the debate with TSA at some point.
The TSA does have to lease that space from the city. So that's the good news. The more square feet they take, the more they have to pay and lease. But yeah, that comes down to what the TSA wants. What the airline will try to work with the TSA to make sure that it has enough of its own space. The airline in this case believes, after reviewing the plans, after looking at floor plans, and after visiting and after having its security representatives talk with TSA representatives in Washington, D.C., that it will have enough space to operate out of the current facility.
Okay. Mr. Hooper, any thoughts from you?
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the time, and thank you, Mr. Penning, for the presentation. As Kristen introduced me, Mitch Hooper, I'm the Aviation Planning Manager for Mead & Hunt, based in Portland, Oregon. I've worked for the City of Salem as a consultant for about the last 14 years, working at SLE on the last master plan and now the one upcoming in this terminal study. I think I would like to start off just by stating that I want to make it clear that we are all advocating to try and make air service successful here. That's not, the Mead and Hunt stance here is not to try and make this overly difficult or complicated. We're just approaching this under the lens of what it has taken to deliver terminal programs at similar sized airports across the West Coast. And so some of the things that we are proposing are items that have come up, just lessons learned working with different types of carriers, different types of markets. And I think that there are a lot of different ways that this project can be approached, but I'll probably just I'll give a few quick points and then open it up to any questions that anyone has. And I know there were some questions that were asked of Mr. Penning that you'd also like me to respond to. So I think the first point here, we've talked a lot about the airline and TSA and what they need to get the service off and running. One of the other items I would want to at least make sure is being considered is the other stakeholders that will be using this airport, and namely the passengers and the passenger experience. In order for the service to be successful, we certainly want passengers to want to fly from here. We want it to be, it doesn't have, we're not proposing luxury or anything out of the ordinary in that sense, but it should be an experience where the passengers feel like they're in an airport. It's an experience that they're used to wherever they go and fly. And obviously, as the routes prove themselves, more improvements can be made over time to increase the level of service as this becomes a more financially viable solution. But that is part of the question was asked about our cost estimates, and that's part of it, is making sure that we're providing enough space for the passengers. Because we have been talking quite a bit about TSA and the footprint that TSA needs, we were part of that consultation when TSA came to visit the terminal, and they gave us a diagram of their equipment, and we overlaid that equipment and where it could go based on the structure of the building, looking at just the weight of the equipment, the power supply, the queuing areas that are needed before and after, and located that. And it essentially takes up about half of the existing passenger hold room. And so with all that filled, as Mr. Penning indicated, you will probably not be able to fit 150 outbound passengers in there before the airplane starts boarding. Now, there certainly is the option to accommodate them pre-security, have them wait and go through in shifts. But an item that we found as we were looking at the passenger flows in the terminal is when that aircraft comes in, if it's full, you're going to have 149 people also getting off that aircraft. And so you'll have these people entering the non-secure area, going to bag claim, going to rental car, meeting their friends and family, and they'll be intermingling with outbound passengers. And so there is the two traffic flows crisscrossing there. And the less space that is available in the hold room, the more people you're going to have waiting on the non-secure side. So that, and again, that all comes back to passenger experience. It's something that I think the airlines and the TSA can certainly work around. The passengers to a certain degree can as well, especially as service gets off and running. But that is one of the drivers of our price, was to make sure that there was enough space available so passengers could clear security, try to avoid some of those bottlenecks in the terminal, the crossing of the passengers, and make it so that the users of the terminal, whether they are residents or visitors, have a pleasant experience. And because this building will be the first and last thing that a lot of folks see as they come through your community. So with that, I could certainly talk at a lot more length about this, but I'm sure you have questions and I'd be happy to answer them to the best of my ability.
Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper, for that information. I don't know if I missed it, or could you respond to Councillor Nordike's question about which, in your estimation, was the minimal cost it would take? Yeah. And I think if you could answer that question directly, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. So there was an attachment that was provided in addition to the staff report that includes a report with some graphics that Mead and Hunt, our team of architects and airport planners, prepared. And if folks have not had a chance to look at that, I would encourage you, because me standing here describing it is only so helpful. That does include cost estimates, and we came up with multiple options. And where we wound up after a couple of rounds of revision is something that we're calling the 149-seat economy option. That is, on our professional opinion, and again, that's based on the passenger terminals we have brought online across the West Coast. That, in our opinion, is the minimal option, and with soft costs and everything and deferred maintenance included, comes to about $5.9 million. That is what we believe would be minimal for the passenger service. Now, that being said, as Mr. Penning has indicated, you certainly can go with less. You can have passengers waiting pre-secure to go through without adding on to the existing square footage, or you could add a modular building, and that will certainly bring the price down. And Ms. Rutherford indicated that in her opening remarks of where that potential would be.
Yeah, Councilor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, Mr. Hooper, but that answer was a little bit frustrating for me, because I heard you say the minimum amount is 5.45, I think you said, but then you said, well, there are things you could do for less. So when I say minimum, and I think when Councilor Nordyke was asking the question, what she was meaning is, like, what's the minimum? Not, I mean, take out everything that you would think is as optional, and what is the minimum? So this has been my frustration all along, is I want to be able to compare apples to apples. And so far, we don't have a shared reality on what the apples look like. And so if you could just tell us, like, we get it, that there are all sorts of enhancements, that there are all sorts of desirable things we want in an airport. We want it to look like a really nice experience. But then also, we know that you could fly out, I fly out of Kona occasionally, and it's, you're standing outside in an open air, situation. So and I love going there. So there's a wide variety and wide range of amenities. And so I'm asking for the minimum. And then we understand we could build up, and there's good reason to build up, but what's the minimum?
So yeah, and apologies for the confusing answer here. I believe the minimum here is you have to take care of the TSA requirements. As Mr. Penning indicated, that can be fit within your existing footprint. In which case, then you don't have sufficient hold space for your entire passenger load, so they would be queuing on the far side of security. Kristen or John, if either of you want to jump in here, you had some additional information probably on some alternate designs that Mead Hunt was not a part of.
So I would just like to add that my understanding from talking with the architectural team and talking, through the process of building code is that we have building occupancy code issues on either side of security. If it's in the hold room, because half the square footage is being taken up by TSA equipment, leaving half of it for bodies, that there's not enough space there with people coming off the plane and people waiting to get on the plane. And if you move some of those people out into the other side of security as people are deplaning, you still have building occupancy issues, that it's too many people in too limited of a space, whether you're on one side or the other side of security. So that's what's my understanding from talking with the architects, what is driving the need for a modular unit or an expansion.
Kristen, is there Mr. Penning has made a really good point, I think, of the airline is asking for perhaps a couple $100,000 worth, and we're looking at 6 million or 5 million or whatever. How far down can we go and meet our basic code, meet, those kinds of things? I think that's what the counselor's asking.
Thank you, Mayor. So the numbers that were provided that I mentioned earlier when I was speaking, relating to using a modular unit, which lowered the amount to about $4.5 or $4.7 million. If you don't do any of the deferred maintenance work, and if you don't do any of the parking lot improvements, you could have a number of about 4.5, 4.7 million. That includes a modular unit to add that additional space for building occupancy.
What is the difference in assumptions here? That's a huge gap.
It's a couple $1 million, and it has to do with using a modular unit as opposed to building everything basically stick built at a different price estimate.
No, even your low, about 4.5 and a couple $100,000 that's a huge difference in perceptions of what needs.
And this is because we don't have specs. We haven't spec'd anything. We haven't done any design. And you can't drive down to get refined cost estimates until you've done design work.
Okay. Councilor Barney.
Thank you. I had a question, let's see, for Mr. Hooper. You're familiar with Glacier International, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'm very familiar with it as well. I'm just thinking about the square footage on the main floor and how they've existed with major airlines for so many years. How were they able to do that?
Well, Glacier is certainly a tale of two seasons, depending if you're flying in and out in the summer or the winter. And if you've been there recently, you will know that building is very much under construction. It was well over capacity. Mead and Hunt did do the master plan, which has led to the terminal design and now the construction for that airport. And I guess it kind of comes into a fundamental understanding of how the airlines operate with the space that is given to them. That they are in the revenue maximization business, and they will put as many people through the building as they possibly can. And they were able to do that in Glacier, not without crowding, but they pretty much use that building to its maximum occupancy during peak periods. The airport was at a bit of a challenge where they did not want to overbuild because in the winter and the shoulder seasons, it's just not busy and they didn't want to have a large hold room. But as we approached our construction, that building was facing relatively substantial delays. We had people waiting outside. We had aircraft sitting on the taxiway waiting for an apron. So as far as delays that were caused on account of facilities not being adequate before the construction started, it was seeing pressure points on all sides of the building. And that's what really triggered the need for the expansion. So it did exist, but as the airlines got busier, they used larger aircraft and operated more flights. The stresses really showed on that building, and that triggered the improvement projects.
Okay, I was curious because I've used it, I don't know, for 10, 15 years, and they move people through pretty quickly in a very small area, and I thought they did a pretty good job overall. So thank you for your opinion.
Councilor Gonzalez?
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things I had hoped from the report we got was a cost estimate on the bare minimum. And so even still today, I'm sort of confused. I was assuming that would have been in there. And one of with regards to airport experience, Mitch, man, very few airports am I happy with the experience. LAX is a disaster. Portland Airport, as nice as it is, I was there Saturday. They throw you around, and I don't know what I don't know who's consulting them. Hopefully it's not you, but we're not getting the answer, and I was hoping we'd have it today in that report, and I didn't see it. That's where I'm confused.
Yeah, Counselor, from staff perspective, the cost estimate that is included in the staff report, and I'll give a caveat that using the lowered amount with the modular, the 4.5 to 4.7 that I mentioned, that is the cost estimate for the bare minimum from staff and our consulting team's perspective. Our bare minimum is based on architectural and architect's input reflecting building code. The consultants and what the airline says they can work in that space is not driven by architectural requirements or by building code. What they need as a minimum level is different than what we would design for a life safety, a building occupancy influence cost.
So, Kristen, what you're saying is that there's no other way other than spending $4 million minimum if we wanted airport service by May of 2023. There's just no other way.
I will add, even with spending $4.5 million, we don't see a path to having this completed by May of 2023. At the earliest, we believe we could have this completed by the fall of 2023.
Okay.
Oh, did the mayor step away? I'm sorry, I missed that. I was stepped away as well. I'm going to call on myself then. So, because that's what we do. So, Kristen, you and I had a conversation earlier about kind of a process to narrow down some of these variables and sort of start eliminating some of these big question marks. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I kind of focused in on is getting a design so we could start, so we had a place to kind of a starting point, because right now I think the problem with one of the things contributing to our lack of shared reality is because we don't have a design. Everybody's kind of working off of what's their concept of what this thing should look like, as opposed to what's the design we're driving towards. So right now we have this sort of squishy goal that everybody kind of has their own opinion on what that goal should look like. And probably nobody's wrong, but the question is, what is the actual goal? And so that's one of the things that I want to get to, is an actual design, so we can actually make a decision like, yeah, this is something we could drive towards or not. Now, in an ideal world, sorry. In an ideal world, this would have been done a year or two ago, preparing for the day when an airline says, hey, Salem, we're ready to fly. But we don't live in an ideal world, and we're not in an ideal world. So we got to start that work now. One of the things I'm looking at is maybe a motion that would direct staff to go do some work to figure out how much it would cost us to get that design started, and to come back at our next meeting, so then we could decide whether or not that's a good thing to do, and to move this thing forward. But I think that that's something we could do in fairly short order, is to look at just that design and potentially fund that to set us up for air service if and when we decide that that's a council priority. So I don't know if you have thoughts about that. I kind of just want to toss that out for colleagues to consider as we're trying to figure out where to go with this thing. So getting a design actually in process, in my mind, is a good starting point.
I think that sounds like a good idea. The other part of that, though, I think it has been missing this evening. I don't know if it's one that you want to talk about at all, is the ongoing personnel costs, the actual annual cost and hit on the general fund and TOC fund we've heard about. How many people actually have to work there that we pay for under our dime, and how that fits with the airline income. I mean, how does that all fit together? What's our startup cost? What would be the impact on the 2023 budget, 2023, 2024 budget in terms of personnel and things like that? I'm not sure I understand that yet either.
And I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. That certainly has to be something we consider going forward. Is it doable? Is it a priority? Where does it fall in the priority list?
Yeah.
Regardless, if we have a design at least started, we could set ourselves up for potential air service should we be able to solve those problems.
Yeah, if you can. And that's really the question. Do you have enough money in the out years to pay for the kind of personnel costs you're setting up if you did get an airline? And it certainly sounds like it from what Mr. Penning said, that there is an income stream that might be available for that kind of cost item. I just don't know what that is. I've heard different numbers in terms of the kinds of security personnel and other kinds of those kinds of things that the city would be responsible for. I think seeing that would be helpful. But you're right, design, we're starting to get more specifics about potential design than we've ever had before. So it's very helpful. The last time this was designed was for Delta, just before they walked away from us. We put quite a bit, about $1 million into that terminal at that time. And that's, I think, the thing that makes people nervous. Vanessa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I came to this meeting and the staff report said minimum is 6.15. Then when asked during the meeting tonight, they said, well, actually it could be closer to 4.5 to 4.7. And I still feel that I haven't gotten a firm answer on what the bare minimum is. And that's something Councillor Gonzalez pointed out and Councillor Hoy pointed out. Another lack of clarification is on whether the TSA requires modular units. What was not clear to me from the staff report is what does the TSA require versus what are all the other things that we want to make this acceptable for all the other reasons. That is what was not clear. Because yes, I saw lots of cost estimates, but those cost estimates don't differentiate between the minimum that TSA requires and what everything else is. So that would be, if we're going to come back, as Councillor Hoy suggests, with more input, that is something that I need a straight answer on. The other thing that I would like to do is I would like to understand what pots of money would be available to assist us with making the minimum terminal improvements. Could we use, for example, transient occupancy tax working capital? And if so, how far would that get us? How much is that? Next question, can we use Fairview Urban Renewal Area funds? If so, how much would that cover? Don't just tell me our obstacles, tell me our solutions. That's what I think everyone on council would like to see. And on top of all of that, I am concerned about parking. It's my understanding that our parking rates are $5 a day. If you go to Portland, it ain't $5 a day. Why? We need to look at revenue solutions for the airport. And to me, $5 a day has been on the books since 2016, and that's not good enough. We also don't know whether we can use self-insurance risk funds for some of our ADA issues that come with this. So I'm seeing here are all the costs. Here's everything standing in our way. What I'm not seeing is how do we overcome these challenges? I would like a more solutions-oriented focus if we're going to bring this back, because I can tell you based on the confusion that and the lack of clarity from these questions, I think we do need more direction from staff, but we cannot wait. This has gone on long enough, and I'm very concerned that the airline will walk based on these challenges we've had, and I'm deeply concerned by that. So thank you.
Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, to add on to that, I would love to see how we could phase in what we would like. You know, I understand the customer experience, and of course, I don't want the city of Salem to be represented by an old rundown building that's very, you know, cumbersome to get around. But, you know, if we have a goal in mind and we can open something up that's functional now, maybe not perfect, but functional, but have goals to achieve, you know, much like what Councillor Varney was talking about with the Glacier Airport. You know, you were talking about how they're now to the point where they have to rebuild, but that has worked for many years for them. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to get at. Can what we have, can it work for us for a number of years as we slowly make improvements over time so that it becomes the airport that we're all proud of? It becomes the airport that has really great flow and connectivity and all of those things that you dream about with an airport. I would like to see kind of a timeline on how we can start with that minimal amount and then build on from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I see Alan Rasmussen. Is that the fellow that represents Modern Building Systems? Maybe he can chime in.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gonzalez. My name is Alan Rasmussen. I represent Modern Building Systems. We were the company that built the building in 2007. And I can tell you that the occupancy per the design criteria at the time was for 253 for the current 3,600 square foot space based on an occupancy code of A3. And we've already drawn a floor plan that I've given to your great city staff, Brian Martin, his team, Alan and them. We got to meet last week, and I think you have a team. There's a public-private partnership that really wants to collaborate on this and make this happen for the city. And there's, as the other councilor was saying, there are solutions, and we would love to work on that. The Fly Salem team, the Chamber, Travel Salem, my company, we'd like to work together with Mead & Hunt and the city staff to make that happen. We've drawn a floor plan showing their concept 3 that could be phased. You could do, there's a 3,600 square foot building space that could be placed on each side of the current terminal space. And I provided a kind of a timeline to tell you how fast we could do that last week to city staff in our meeting. Let's say hypothetically you guys gave an order to go for a building space tomorrow. I would have a building in production by January, ready to ship to the site by February, and have it installed ready to go by March. Each one of those 3,600 square foot spaces, just to give you some conceptual on dollars, was about an $850,000 space, each 3,600 square foot side. But that doesn't take into account any infrastructure costs in mechanical, electrical, or plumbing. And those are the things that could be, that should be being looked at right now. I think it would be prudent to even start the site planning process on that. There's timelines with the planning process to do that. And just talking to West Tech Engineering, a company here in town, that's something that's very minimal in cost that could be in hand into the city departments by the end of the month. And it's even something that the Travel Salem, Salem Chamber, the private business groups would like to pay for and commission and provide the city to help prod this project along. So I think there's quite a bit of ability to get this project moving and make a successful outcome.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez. That was very interesting, Alan. That was really helpful. Kristen?
Yes, we're absolutely supportive of moving forward with design, because there have been changed circumstances since the existing modular was developed in 2007 that impacts building occupancy. So there were comments made about wanting to know what the TSA requirements are. And there's more than TSA requirements. There's building code and building occupancy requirements in addition to TSA requirements. So we start with the TSA requirements and what their layout is, and look at how much of that floor space that's going to eat up and how much less is available for people. And that changes building occupancy ratios because your square footage is different because you've got all this equipment there. So from 2007 to now, the square footage for TSA equipment is bigger than it was in 2007. And that holding room was designed for planes that held smaller passenger loads than what we're talking about today. So we're looking at taking more people and putting them in a smaller area of floor space, which changes the building occupancy requirements, which is what's driving the expansion as a minimal need to get started. So we can get building occupancy approval to move forward with this. Right. And I think moving forward with design will really help clarify a lot of that and also help clarify the cost, because it's very difficult to get refined costs for something that you don't have fully scoped or designed, especially in this kind of construction environment. And, I've got the numbers in the staff report for what the cost estimates were based on a design build project. Yeah. And those numbers, as I mentioned earlier, are lowered based on the modular components.
Okay. Councilor Hoyd, you want to get your motion on the table and sort of we start talking about it a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
I move staff provide council by the October 24th, 2022 meeting with funding options to support obtaining designs for the necessary improvements to the airport to support commercial air service.
Second.
Second by Phillips.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The idea behind this is like to start laying down some markers, to start getting some things set so we can all just get a shared reality. So if staff comes back and says, look, it's going to cost us this much to get the design going, then we can make a decision whether or not we want to do that, whether we're ready to take that leap. But we need a starting point. And because right now we are just, we're just kind of, I don't know, flinging in the wind. So I think this would get us to a starting point, and that's what I really want to, to where we can have a decision point made where council can say yes or no. So
yeah, I don't see how council can make a decision with the these two almost separate realities going on, and then listening to Mr. Rasmussen kind of come in with a really different discussion. It's a really, I hope, Ms. Rutherford, if this passes, that would be the kind of thing you're looking for, that would give you the opportunity to do the design and share the information with the council again, because it is, I mean, you know it, this is really a difficult decision based on the information that's on the table right now. It may be an impossible decision without getting the information clarified.
And Mr. Mayor, I think that
Mr.
Penning might have a comment, but he's not able to raise his hand. So I thought I'd just point that out to you.
Okay, just a second, Mr. Penning. Mr. Phillips here's got his hand up first, so we'll let him go.
Yeah, thank you. Let me lower my hand. Okay, so thank you, Mayor Bennett, and thank you, Council President Chris Hoy, for the motion. I support it. I think we're getting closer, and I think real work has happened tonight. I mean, I do think there are two concepts that I'm wrapping my brain around. We all want to hear what's the minimum for the TSA requirements, but there are also likely other requirements that are separate from the TSA that are the true bare minimum. But just to reiterate, at the sake of being, for the possibility of being redundant, I want to reemphasize, like, is it really 2 modular units, or is there a creative way with only 1 modular unit that we can meet those essential minimums? I am not concerned at this moment in time with end user experience at the starting. I really want to know, what is our basement floor on this? So I think that this is a great idea. Moving forward in design gets us further down the road and gets us more prepared. I am concerned about the timeline, but my hope is that we remain competitive as a community moving forward. So even if we can't meet the May goal, that if we're doing everything we can to be ready by fall, we can still be an attractive option for other airlines. I do think this is a very different conversation than what happened in our past with Delta. So I think that Councilor Hoy's motion is good, and I think we will get a clearer picture moving forward based on this. So I'm very much in support of it.
Mr. Penning.
And I've got the same dog barking problem as Councilor Hoy, so I apologize for that. Kept him quiet for hours, and at the moment I speak. I just want to mention, keep in mind, I'm really representing the views of your potential tenant here. Right. And if a design process is going to push a start date beyond May, you're probably designing a building that's going to sit empty for a long time.
I thought you were really clear on that really aiming toward an April, May deadline is almost essential for the client you're bringing to the table, if I understand correctly.
An airline isn't going to want to start service in the fall. That's our down season. The other thing that I would note is the fire code capacity of our hold room is, as confirmed, 253. Yeah. If TSA takes half of that space, that would leave us with essentially 126 we can hold. The aircraft we're talking about has 147 seats. At an 86% filled factor, we have room for every single passenger. And if we run it, Portland runs at 81%, right? So if we run at 86, we're doing great. Yeah. So even at an 86% load factor, we can still accommodate every single passenger in our current space in the gate area. So I just, from the perspective of the airline, simple decision or simple solutions and pragmatic solutions are probably preferred. And I just want to make sure that that part is clear. And thank you very much for letting me speak.
Yeah, you bet. And Kristen, that's real clear, isn't it? That in order to deal with this particular offer or suggestion on the table that there is an airline waiting in the wings, can you do your work based on at least see if you can hit that March, April, May, I'd say March, April deadline?
So, Mayor, I would love to be able to hit that deadline.
Well, see if you can.
But we also have site design review, environmental assessment, FAA review. So there are components of this that we don't control.
Yeah,
but we will do our best.
I know. Do your best. That's not even, if it can't be done, it can't be done. But it's really it has to almost, without that, this starts to become problematic.
Well, and before any of that, we need to have funds, which we don't have approved yet.
Well, that doesn't seem to be the discussion yet. It's we have a design. I think that's what the counselor is asking for.
Yes, yes, and we will be back to we will be back with a budget for the design.
Great. Okay. Back with a budget for the design. Okay.
That also costs, yes.
No, I know. Well, everybody wants you to make it cheap, okay? Okay, is there anything else on this one? Okay, we have a motion, the recorder call a roll.
Counselor Stapleton?
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka?
Aye.
Counselor Phillips?
Aye.
Counselor Leung?
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez?
Aye.
Counselor Hoy?
Aye.
Counselor Nordike?
Aye.
Counselor Varney?
Aye.
Mayor Bennett?
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Okay, we'll move on then to information reports. Any information needed? Got our volunteer recognition on the 17th. Is that right, Keith? Is that okay? We've got some appointments. Move along. Okay, we'll go to first readings.
Ordinance Bill number 21-22, an ordinance relating to human rights, amending SRC 97.005, 97.010, and 97.080, repealing SRC 97.085, and creating new provisions.
Okay, Councilor Hoy.
I move we advance ordinance bill number 21-22 to second reading for enactment.
Second.
Who seconded? I can't tell. Oh, you did, Virginia. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is our Human Rights Commission has done some great work and has really worked to bring our code and things up into sort of 2022. And I'm very happy and pleased with the work that they've done, especially regarding housing and as it relates as a human right issue. I think this is, it's high time that we do this. And so I'm thankful for Gretchen Bennett and all of her work in guiding the commission to this outcome. So thank you.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, if recorded, please call a roll.
Counselor Nishioka?
Aye.
Counselor Phillips?
Aye.
Counselor Leung?
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez?
Aye.
Counselor Hoy?
Aye.
Counselor Nordike?
Aye.
Counselor Varney?
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton?
Aye.
Mayor Bennett?
Aye. Okay, our next one.
Ordinance Bill number 19-22, an ordinance relating to the Multiple Unit Housing Tax Incentive Program, amending SRC 2.825.
Councilor Stapleton, do you want to give us the motion?
Sure, thank you. Let me see here. I move that we direct staff to conduct the first reading and advance to second reading the ordinance bill number 19-22 to amend SRC 2.825 related to multiple unit housing tax incentive program, amending the requirements to the program. Did I get that all right?
Yeah.
Second.
So, I just had a quick question on this. It's conduct a first reading in advance, and aren't we just doing the first reading right now? That just seemed.
That was my question too. And it's written this way.
I can tell you.
Oh, okay, I guess this is what we're doing. But Dan, maybe you can clarify.
I apologize that the recommendation is not correct, but it's in a harmless error.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's have the recorder call a roll in.
Counselor Phillips?
Aye.
Counselor Leung?
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez? Counselor Gonzalez?
Aye.
Counselor Hoy?
Aye.
Counselor Nordike,
Aye.
Counselor Varney,
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton,
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka,
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. We'll go to our second reading.
Ordinance Bill number 20-22, an ordinance declaring certain territory located at 4650 and 4680 Hazelgreen Road Northeast and land adjacent, annexed to the city of Salem, prescribing Salem Area Comprehensive Plan Map designation, prescribing zoning, and withdrawing the territory from the Marion County Fire District Number 1. Counselor Leung,
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez,
Aye.
Counselor Hoy,
Aye.
Counselor Nordike,
Aye.
Counselor Varney,
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton,
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka,
Aye.
Counselor Phillips,
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. All right, I don't see any further business, so if there is none, we're adjourned.
For more videos and for more information, go to capitalcommunitymedia.org and follow us on social media.